So FYI, the first sections of inventions generally rigidly organized. They're very organized. You know, they've got their motive, they've got the counter motive, and then they put sequence, and then it's a cadence, right? So it's got this sort of standard organization. Baroque composers were all about structure and form. So yeah, section 2 begins in F major with accompaniment immediately sequenced. Note that in sequence C, only the lower voice is sequenced. Section 2 has no fewer than 3 sets of sequences and very little free material. All right? So the perfect authentic cadence in measure 37-38 signals the end of section 2. All right? So section 2 has no fewer than 3 sets of sequences. All right? So you're not going to see more than 3 sequences. And there's very little free material. Free material is material that is not the motive or counter motive. So it's other stuff, not motive or counter motive. Okay? So it's other stuff that we can't attribute to some form of the motive or counter motive. Because every once in a while you get some stuff in there that's made up, and then that's called free material. All right? So anything that doesn't actually belong to the motive and counter motive that's established in the first section, right? Anything that doesn't look like it can be that is called free material. And you don't see much in the second section. Now, not all inventions have 3 sections. However, a lot do. Invention 4 employs section 3 to return to the invention to the tonic key and prepare for the final cadence. This section is organized in a similar manner to that of section 2, but contains only 1 sequence. Note that the motive and counter motive in measure 44 and 45 are exact duplicate of measures 5 and 6. The key scheme is an important factor in determining the form of Bach's 2-part inventions. All right? So if we look at this, figure 2.4, this is the entire invention here. So we'll go through it a little bit. Okay, so we're going to look at Bach's invention and see how it's all analyzed and what it looks like. And yeah, I'll be back there flipping the book and showing you, you can guide along with the book. All right? So here's our sequence. So here's our free material cadence. Another sequence based on the first motive. Another sequence based on the first motive. This is called free material, this trill. Usually free material happens around a cadence. Motive. Excellent. So you can see how this is broken up a little bit. We've got our first motive right here. I'll circle it in orange. All right? And then our counter motive comes in response to that. Okay? Meanwhile, we've got the actual motive going on the left hand. And we get the same deal, all right? So here's the main motive, comes back. We've got counter motive right here. And then we start the sequence. This is sequence A. This materials are derived from the motive, all of this, okay? Whereas this material derived from the counter motive, right? These constant eighth notes. It's not necessarily sequenced, but it's supporting the sequence, right? And it, in and of itself, is sequenced, even though it doesn't exactly match this motive right here, okay? So just be aware of that. Then, the left hand takes over the motive, right? And there are times when both parts will be sort of sharing the motive, right? So this stuff right here is called free material, right? So this is new stuff that we don't really have too much of a name for, because it just sort of comes out. You could probably count this right here, from here to here, as counter motive. But this would be free material. Pretty much call this free material. This is the cadence right here, which is also free material. I mean, it's not made up of the motive. And they're calling this free material, even though it actually kind of lines up as just a descending chord. So you can argue it either way. The one thing to say it is free material rather than part of the motive is that you don't have this jump, right? This jump of a seventh. So it doesn't start on boo dee 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 dee, right? From the B. So normally you would probably jump down to C and come up. But whatever, right? So if this were down here, then it would definitely be motive material. Since the C is an octave higher, it's gray area, basically. All right. And then we get more material. So this is derived from the counter motive, right? Whereas this comes from the motive, yada da 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 dee da, more sequence. Whereas this trill is just a suspension, or what we call a pedal point, right? Because this would normally be played, you see this a lot in Bach's music where it's just he lays on one of the pedals on the organ. It's just, you know, hanging out. So I'm trilling. So this is all free material here, right? New stuff. So, and then you see that says free inversion of the motive, right? So they basically took this and flipped it upside down. So it's a descending scale rather than an ascending scale, right? So this is still be considered part of the actual motive. It's 1, 2, yada dee da dee dee doo. Dee doo 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 doo. Dee doo 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 dee doo 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 doo. Right? Still flipped, reversed. And now we get back our normal motive. This is a derived motive, so he's messing with it even more. It's getting to look less and less like the material that we knew. Here's more material from the counter motive, right? Here's part of more of that sequence. This you could just sort of label as free material, but don't bother labeling it. It's just ending the sequence right there, right? We get more free material. He adds in more of this. More free material here. Yada da 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 dee da. Right? So this is basically it. You're just looking at motives and counter motives. We've got more free material, so this doesn't appear anywhere in the opening statements, right? So we call it free material. Here, on the other hand, is our original motive in sequence, and it keeps going, right? until we get to this spot right here, free material, as we go up to a cadence, right? So the free material kind of fills in and makes it possible for wherever we end up here in our sequence to get to the cadence, all right? And here we've got more material from their counter motive, although it's very different from what we thought, from what it originally sounded like, right? And then here, our original motive comes back, right? This is new stuff. This is something new, right? I would call this free material. They're labeling it as part of the sequence. So don't worry too much, and it's also left over from the cadence. And it's or as a free sequence. You can see these two are exchanging, right? However, this material comes from the counter motive. This guy comes from the counter motive, right? Here's our main motive back. Motive comes back. This we'll call free material. So you see how this works? Next one. Right? So here's our motive. Motive, motive, motive. Free material, right? It's not a scale. Da, dee, da, dee, da, dee, da, da, da. And right before a cadence, you can see free material. So this helps us get to the cadence. And then here we've got counter motive stuff. Call this free material. I'd almost call that free material, or left over from the last cadence. That could be it too. It's mostly free material. Oh, I didn't mark this one. Free material. All right, so before and after a cadence, you'll get a lot of free material. And then we've got our cadence. Well, bam. And then free inversion of the motive, which means it's a very loose inversion. A loose representation of an inversion of the motive. All right? Here's this free material. There, although you can see this is hidden. Ya, da 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 dee 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 dee, right? So it's just missing some of the notes. And then we've got our big cadence and the end. All right? So you see how that works, where they just switch all of these parts off, on and off, on and off. It's pretty clear, I hope. Hope it's not too confusing.